So with no further ado, we will pass it over to Nancy.
It's a pleasure to join you guys virtually, of course. We love getting calls from everybody, and I think through the calls that we've had to the practice advisor's office, it has allowed us to identify those things that are affecting everybody in their practice, and to develop those FAQs, and to know what's important to you guys, to roll it out, and to advocate for some change to make things a little bit easier when we're all facing the challenges that we are. So for today's presentation, I've been asked to touch on what the Law Society's response has been to the COVID-19 crisis, maybe touch on some FAQ issues that we're getting at the Law Society, and maybe just comment on some things that we've already heard today as well. And finally, just to talk about, what do we think is next from the Law Society's perspective, and with regard to the profession. I think as we've been going along, it's kind of like the prayer of serenity, have the courage to change the things you can and the wisdom to know the difference. We've got a role, obviously, in protecting the public, but that involves helping lawyers serve the public and helping them close their deals, avoiding litigation delays. And all of this is within the backdrop of being able to see lawyers running their practices in a viable way and to operate safely as well. And ethical obligations are always there. They don't go away in the course of this and have to be fulfilled. So we have to protect that client confidentiality. We have to make sure that clients are getting responses. We have to make sure that they understand what they're being told, what their options are along the way, so that they can give informed advice or instructions. And coincidentally, maybe in a very timely way, we have adopted in the early part of this year new commentary to our competence rule in the code of conduct that makes lawyers obliged to be technologically competent. And if you weren't before, you're going to be now, because you've had to be. So it's been kind of forced on us. Some of the first things that we were able to do since the pandemic hit were those within our own rules. Those were no brainers, and they were pretty easy to do. And you guys have already mentioned this, previous speakers, the client ID and verification rules. You can now do that verification piece over a video link. So you don't have to sit there across the table from somebody and take their government issued photo ID in person. You can do it by video. Now, just a caveat on that, some people on the call might have sort of a broader practice than just civil litigation, or you might have partners in your office who are doing land titles or real estate deals rather. And what we're hearing is some mortgage lenders are not okay with doing client verification by video. So you have to keep in mind what your lender's instructions are, those of you in those multiple practice areas. One of the things that I would add, I mean, there's the protocol and the guidance that is on the website about how to do client verification by video. But one of the things that we recommend in practice, or as a matter of practice, is that you actually get the client to send you a copy of their ID front and back by email in advance. This is just an added sort of check-in piece, just to make sure that the person on the other end of that call is who they say that they are. And even when you're dealing with a video, I have found, testing it out, with Skype or whatever, how well can you actually see a signature on a document or that actual detail on the ID. So get a copy of it sent to you by email in advance. And I think it was Constantine, you made the point as well. Get that client to talk to you in advance about getting their consent to use a video. One of the things that we talked about early on in developing the real estate protocol for land titles was, should we require people to be videoing, or even recommend it, that they video their client meeting? Well, sure, you'd have to get the client consent, obviously, in advance of that because our code requires it. But one of the issues that lawyers also face is, do they have the technology that allows them to record it and then actually save it? Because there's no point, if you're going to record it, you need to be able to save it as well. So people were feeling that they didn't have the bandwidth to actually save all these recordings of hour-long meetings. So I just throw those two things out as things that we've considered along the way. And of course, taking those screenshots of the client during the video meeting, holding up their ID next to their face and retaining that, because you are required to retain copies of the ID on your file. And you should also document what you did and why. Chances are you're not going to forget that, in the spring of 2020, you were in the middle of a pandemic, but nonetheless, make sure that you do that. Um, okay, the second and sort of most urgent issue that we've been able to deal with through rules, I guess, is dealing with our students. And of course, articling is governed by Law Society rules. And the first thing that we started hearing was that either firms were letting go existing students because they couldn't afford to keep them on, so they weren't going to be able to finish their articles, or they were already making some projections that they wouldn't be able to take on the students that they had agreed to hire for the summer. So for those of you who are following our e-bulletins, we've changed our rules to allow students to do an 8-month to a 12-month article. So of course the option to do 12 still exists, and we are offering a larger subsidy for the cost of the CPLED or prep course, the new course that we're offering. We also extended our trust safety deadlines. In the middle of a pandemic, it's pretty tough to be worried about doing your year-end reporting and that sort of thing. And we've also made it possible for those of you who are doing those responsible lawyer applications to do your affidavits by virtual means as well, just like the rest of the world. I think the bigger part, and maybe the tougher but the most impactful part of the work that we've done since pandemic has struck has been to work with our external partners and stakeholders to identify those barriers that are out there to working remotely and to influence how lawyers can continue to work and serve clients in this pandemic. And unfortunately, most of those barriers are in our legislation and the way that we have to deal with our courts and our government registries. And that primarily is our legislation that says appear before me in the province of Alberta to complete this or that affidavit or certificate on a government or a Guarantee Acknowledgement Act certificate. So these are the kinds of things that we've been working on with our partners in the courts and with the partners in government. And we really have to say a big thank you to the courts and all of those people that we partner up with in the government, whether they're legislative drafters or Curtis Woolard, who's Registrar of Land Titles. Everybody has been really doing their part to try to pitch in and make this all possible, right? Just taking a step back from that for a moment, we see lawyers working in a variety of different ways. Some say, look, we're an essential service. We're going to continue to meet clients in our office by still, maintaining social distancing and making sure that, their office environment is clean and people aren't coming to work sick and that sort of stuff. And making sure the clients aren't coming in sick as well, screening people in advance and that sort of thing. Some lawyers are going to people's homes. Some lawyers are going and they're meeting clients in parkades and doing documents through the window. They're doing it through the living room window at the house. They're doing it through the living or the car window in the parkade. And we have got a story from one lawyer who's actually taken his executed documents that everybody's been handling and he's put them in the oven at, I don't know, don't ask me the temperature, please, or the timing. I don't want to have people's houses start on fire, but to kill the virus so that they're actually able to handle the documents. So um, that those are kind of interesting solutions. Others, their personal circumstances are such that they do not want to work from home, they don't want to work from the office. Sorry, I've got my daughter coming here and asking. This is the beauty of working from home. Yes, eat it, please. It's fine. Anyway, sorry about that. some lawyers, their personal circumstances allow them to work from home effectively. They got a great home office set up. They got all the remote connections going. It's all great. And they prefer to do that because they themselves may have health issues. They may have kids they need to homeschool. They may have some family members who have health issues and they're trying to support them and they don't want to expose them unnecessarily. We've got a question, remote conduct of investigations. Yeah, I mean, doing investigations, I'll talk about that. Sorry, I'm getting distracted by the little questions popping up. But those are things that we need to accommodate people on how they're comfortable working and how they need to work given their personal circumstances. And we were worried early on that law firms might not be included in the list of essential services, but that happily did not materialize. And really, how could it? Lawyers are essential, and we have the option of staying open and should, but you have the choice to work remotely, and this is what today is all about. So some of the questions that we got from people who are really used to working, in that bricks and mortar environment is, can we actually have our staff work from home? Because we don't know if we can effectively supervise them. And of course, people have been doing this all along. They've got paralegals who are doing real estate from their home, and they've already had this stuff set up to do it. So many were already doing it and were quite able to effectively supervise. And we're here to tell you that yes, you can. You don't have to have somebody, under your nose to properly supervise them in a physical working space. So one of the things though you have to be cautious about is this high level of diligence that you still need to do. And it isn't just about the work product itself and making sure that people are competently working on their files and getting things done. If you've got staff who have access to your trust accounts, for example, this is that time period where you have to exercise that high level of diligence as well, because given the opportunity or the temptation or other financial issues that may be going on, you as a lawyer on the file have to make up the shortfall in your trust account if your staff steals from you. Unfortunately, we see that once in a while. And maybe the bigger risk is the one related to internet and system security. I mean, we at the Law Society were even hit by, in a minor way, mind you, because we have great tech people, but by a phishing incident where people need to or clicked on a link and that sort of thing. So we have better safeguards in place, and we have to be really careful about people using their own devices and that sort of thing. So I've been given the 3 minutes or maybe 5 minutes remark or wave of the flag here. So I'm just going to go back to what we were doing with the stakeholders. The courts and Land Titles Office were our first collaborators, and we were able to rely on some great resources from other jurisdictions to adapt to our use regarding the completion of court affidavits and land titles documents. And the litigation and real estate practitioners were, I think, the ones that suffered the most and that we heard the most from, followed closely by the wills and estates people. So you can go online to our website or the court's website to find all that you need to know for how to do swearing of an affidavit or online or video witness execution of land titles documents. If your client is self-isolating, or if you are, or if you need to get documents signed, whether they be, the original document or the affidavit. For the purposes of land titles, their biggest concern is making sure that they have original wet ink versions, and we want people to be declaring the fact that they have executed those documents by video and not just sort of doing it and not altering the documents. So, and again, that recommendation of getting the ID scanned to you in advance is an extra bit of extra advice that we want to make sure people do. But I'm not going to walk through all of the Court of Queen's Bench guidance or what's on the Law Society's website. It's all there for you to print out and read and refer to as a checklist for when you're doing these documents, whether they be affidavits for the court, whether they be execution of land titles documents or affidavits of execution for your contingency fee agreement or otherwise. Um, so I'll just cut to the chase here. One of the things I'm going to add about doing affidavits is um, I think the presumption is when we put all of these resources together is that the lawyer is sitting in Alberta and the client might or might not be sitting in Alberta. You should identify where the client is and um, and it's okay if the lawyer is out, or sorry, if the client is outside of the jurisdiction. Curtis Woolard, who is our registrar at Land Titles, has specifically endorsed that as well. So you are able to take documents or take affidavits when your client is out of the jurisdiction. You should note that on the document. If you're really in doubt, you might even want to notarize that document rather than just commission it. But I think the biggest issue is where the lawyer is located, and we're talking about Alberta lawyers here. And the land titles guidance requires that the lawyer be an Alberta lawyer, insured and physically present here. So those are one type of question that we've gotten. Some people are concerned as well. One of the other things that we're concerned about is making sure that the transaction that you're dealing with is done in a way that maintains its integrity and there's no undue influence going on. There's no sort of someone in the background exerting duress or that sort of thing. It's hard. You wouldn't know if someone was sitting in this room with me or not. And until, half an hour ago, my daughter was, but you wouldn't be able to see that. So we're asking people to scan the room or make sure that who else is in the room. So those are some other sort of safety and integrity issues about the process that we want to have people um, think about as well when they're doing these documents. So I know I'm running short of time, and what are we talking about for the future? I'll maybe just cut to that. We're talking about, and I would support as well, people even now, can you do questioning by video? It will speed things up. Let's be creative and accommodating. If you can do something in mediation by video, let's do that. We want to keep those court actions down to a minimum. If you don't have to go to the courthouse, try to resolve it ahead of time. Try to get into mediation by video. Don't have to go to court just because you're not agreeing to do something like a questioning by video. You shouldn't have to go to get a court direction to do that sort of thing. In the future, is this going to mean a difference to how we execute wills, personal directives, powers of attorney? We're waiting, I hope to hear one day soon on a ministerial order to deal with the execution of Guarantee Acknowledgement Act certificates by video. And in the bigger picture, this is going to affect how we deliver CPD. This is going to affect how we work with the courts and with our registry systems and land titles. The Law Society has been engaged in some work with some specific individuals in what we've called an innovation sandbox. And I think that the uptake on that is going to be great. And work in innovation is going to engage our stakeholders with land titles, for example. We should be able to do more remotely. And we are, our doors are open to work with people to see how we can make innovative technology solutions work within our rules. And if the rules need to be changed, we can advocate for change. We have our practice management team that is there to support people who have technological questions as well. And Polsky, Donna Purcell, you mentioned him earlier, and he loves all this stuff. So this tech stuff is his bailiwick. But bigger picture, this teaches us all something. If we weren't working remotely now, you need to look at what's working and what's not. You might need a bring your own device policy for your staff. And you might need to educate your staff and yourself about how the technology that we're using actually works and how to use it safely. This is another sad reminder after the fires that we've had and the floods that we've had. You need to have a disaster preparedness policy. when you cannot come to work, how do you communicate with people to make sure that they know what to do next, whether it's your clients or your staff? Look at your insurance. Business interruption might not cover the fact that you're out because of a pandemic, where it might cover you if your office actually burned down or got flooded. Look at your insurance. Look at having employee dishonesty insurance. Look at what are your clients going through? Do you need to maybe use more social media to advertise and be a part of your community? And that's those are the things. And by all means, this is a big reminder. We've got government subsidies that we can access as law firms, and we're encouraging people to do that and talk to your accountant about the timing of your billings, because that might impact some of your ability to qualify as well, from what I've read so far. But you know, our biggest concern now is keeping people healthy and safe and financially able to continue to practice and serve clients. So I guess I'm going to just end up there.